Nothing says love like an empty seat and a lipstick-stained napkin at Applebee's. I sat there for 43 minutes, watching my anniversary dinner get cold, while my wife Lila texted someone more important than her husband of 12 years. The waitress, a kind-faced woman named Betty, kept refilling my coffee with the sort of pity usually reserved for roadkill. "She's probably stuck in traffic," Betty offered, though we both knew better. "Yeah," I said, stirring sugar into my fourth cup. "Traffic." When Lila finally arrived, she looked stunning in that calculated way that meant she'd been somewhere else first. Her lipstick was fresh, her hair perfectly arranged, and she had that glow that comes from doing something you shouldn't be doing. "Sorry, honey," she said, sliding into the booth without meeting my eyes. "Work ran late. On our anniversary? You know how it is." She picked at her salad, checking her phone every 30 seconds. The Peterson account needed immediate attention. I nodded and smiled, playing the role of the understanding husband. What she didn't know was that I'd called her office an hour ago. The Peterson account had been closed for 3 months. After dinner, we walked to our cars in the restaurant parking lot. The October air was crisp, carrying the smell of dying leaves and broken promises. Lila was already reaching for her phone when it buzzed with a text. "Outside now," she read aloud, then froze. I looked over her shoulder at the message. The sender was listed as gym trainer, but I knew better. I'd known for months. "Interesting," I said. "Your gym trainer wants you outside at 9:30 at night?" Her face went pale, then red. "It's not what you think." "What I think," I said, pulling out my own phone, "is that your gym trainer has the same number as my brother Adam." The color drained from her face completely. Across the parking lot, a familiar BMW idled near the street, exhaust visible in the cool air. "Nick, I can explain." "No need." I held up my phone, showing her the recording app that had been running all evening. "I've got everything I need right here." She lunged for the phone, but I was faster. Construction work keeps you quick on your feet. "You've been recording me?" "For 3 months," I said calmly. Amazing what people say when they think nobody's listening, especially in cars with old phones hidden under the seats. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. In the distance, Adam's car honked twice. "He's waiting," I said. "Better not keep him waiting." You know how impatient my big brother gets. "This isn't over," she hissed, backing toward the BMW. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt in months. "Lila, sweetheart, this hasn't even started." She ran to Adam's car and jumped in. Through the windshield, I could see them arguing, their faces illuminated by the dashboard lights. Adam kept looking over at me, his expression a mix of anger and fear. I waved. They sped off into the night, leaving me alone in the parking lot with my coffee-stained shirt and my carefully laid plans. I pulled out my real phone, not the decoy I'd shown Lila, and scrolled through months of evidence. Photos, recordings, bank statements, credit card bills, a paper trail that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Marty. "How'd it go?" "Phase 1 complete," I typed back. "Tomorrow we start Phase 2. I drove home to our empty house, humming along to the radio. The house felt different now that the pretense was over. Bigger somehow, like a weight had been lifted from the walls themselves. I walked through each room, seeing it with new eyes. The kitchen where Lila had taken so many work calls from Adam. The living room where she'd sat on the couch, texting him while I watched TV beside her. The bedroom where she'd come home smelling like his cologne and claimed she'd been at yoga class. All of it was about to change. I went down to the basement, to the workshop where I'd spent the last 3 months preparing. The walls were covered with printouts, photos, and timelines. It looked like something from a crime show, which I suppose it was, in a way. The crime of betrayal, investigated by the victim, prosecuted by the wronged. In the center of it all was a corkboard with 2 photos, Lila and Adam, laughing together outside his downtown condo. They looked happy, carefree, like they were getting away with something. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Lila and 43 text messages that ranged from apologetic to furious to desperate. I deleted them all without reading past the first few words and made myself breakfast. Real breakfast, eggs, bacon, toast, not the protein bars and coffee that had been my diet for months while I'd been too focused on investigation to eat properly. My phone rang as I was finishing my eggs. Marty's name flashed on the screen. "Morning, sunshine," he said. "Ready for some fun?" "Born ready. You get the stuff? Sitting in my truck right now. Sugar, fish, and a few other surprises. Adam's going to have a very interesting day." Marty Kowalski had been my best friend since high school and my business partner for the last 5 years. He ran a towing company while I worked construction, and between the two of us, we knew every dirty secret in our mid-sized New England town. More importantly, Marty was an ex-cop who understood exactly how far we could push things without crossing legal lines. "Meet me at the site at lunch," I said. "I've got the morning shift, but I'll slip away." "You got it. And Nick? Your neighbor lady called me this morning." "Mrs. Hadley?" "The very same. Apparently she saw some interesting activity in your driveway last night. A certain BMW that shouldn't have been there." I grinned. Mrs. Hadley was 73 years old and the unofficial intelligence network for our entire neighborhood. Nothing happened on Maple Street without her knowledge, and she had a particular fondness for justice being served. "Tell her I'll stop by tonight," I said. "I suspect she has some stories to share." Work that morning was a blessing. Physical labor had a way of clearing the mind, and I needed clarity for what was coming. I was foreman on a commercial renovation downtown, ironically just 6 blocks from Adam's office building. As I directed my crew through the morning tasks, I found myself looking toward his building, wondering if he was up there right now, sweating about what I might do next. He should be sweating. At 11:30, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Nick Forrester. "It's me." Adam's voice was tight with controlled panic. "We need to talk." "Do we?" "Look, about last night. What about it? This doesn't have to get ugly. Lila and I, it just happened. These things happen between adults." I stopped hammering and walked away from my crew, finding a quiet corner of the construction site. "These things," I repeated. "You mean like fucking your brother's wife in his bed while he's at work? Those kinds of things?" "Nick. Or did you mean the kind of things like using the credit card I pay for to buy her jewelry? Or maybe the kind of things like taking her to the same restaurant where we had our first date?" Silence on the other end. "See, Adam, I know about all of it. The hotel receipts, the restaurant bills, the little weekend getaways. I know about the apartment you looked at together on Riverside Drive. I know about the joint checking account you opened at First National. I even know about the pregnancy scare last month." "How could you possibly?" "Because I'm not the stupid little brother you think I am. I'm the guy who's been watching you destroy my marriage for 8 months, collecting evidence, and planning exactly how to destroy your life in return." The line went quiet, except for Adam's heavy breathing. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "I want you to suffer," I said simply. "I want you to lose everything that matters to you, the same way you helped my wife lose everything that should have mattered to her. I want you to understand what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you trust. I never meant for this to happen, but it did happen, and now you get to live with the consequences." I hung up and went back to work, but my mind was already on the afternoon's activities. Adam's car would be parked in his usual spot in the underground garage of his office building. Marty would be waiting with his tow truck and a few special additions to Adam's day. By the time Adam realized his car was gone, we'd be long finished with our modifications. At lunch, I met Marty at his garage on the outskirts of town. He had Adam's silver BMW up on the lift, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "This is almost too easy," he said, holding up a bag of sugar. You sure you want to go this route? There are cleaner ways to mess with someone. Clean isn't the point, I said. The point is making sure he understands that actions have consequences. We spent an hour working on Adam's car. The sugar in the gas tank was just the beginning. Marty had also procured several pounds of fish that had been sitting in the sun for 2 days. We carefully placed them in the air vents, under the seats, and in the trunk. By the time Adam found them all, the smell would be permanently embedded in the upholstery. "What about the girlfriend?" Marty asked as we worked. "What girlfriend?" "Adam's got a side piece besides your wife. Redhead, works downtown. Saw them together last week at Murphy's Tavern." I stopped working and stared at him. "Are you telling me that my brother is cheating on my wife with someone else?" "Looks that way. Want me to find out more?" "Oh, yes," I said, feeling a new layer of rage settle over me. "Yes, I very much want you to find out more." We finished with Adam's car, and Marty towed it back to the office building, parking it exactly where it had been. To anyone watching, it would look like a routine tow and return, maybe a parking violation that got sorted out. Adam would discover the truth soon enough. That evening, I stopped by Mrs. Hadley's house. She lived 2 doors down from me in a small Cape Cod that she'd maintained perfectly for 30 years. Her husband had died 5 years ago, and since then, she'd devoted herself to keeping track of the neighborhood's comings and goings. "Nicholas," she said, opening the door before I could knock. "I was wondering when you'd come by." Her living room was exactly what you'd expect from a 73-year-old woman: floral wallpaper, doilies on every surface, and approximately 47 photos of grandchildren. But Mrs. Hadley's eyes were sharp as a prosecutor's, and she'd been watching my marriage fall apart long before I'd figured it out myself. "I saw that car last night," she said, without preamble. "Same one that's been coming around for months when you're at work." "How many months?" "Since spring. Always parks at the end of the street, never in your driveway. Except last night." She poured me coffee from a pot that looked older than I was, and settled into her favorite chair. "I took pictures," she said casually. I nearly choked on my coffee. "Pictures?" "Oh yes. My grandson got me one of those digital cameras for Christmas. Amazing what they can do these days." She pulled out a tablet and swiped through dozens of photos. "There's your wife getting into that car. There's her getting out of it. There's the driver, handsome man, looks a bit like you." "That's my brother." "I thought it might be." Family resemblance. She swiped to another photo. "This one's my favorite." The image showed Lila and Adam kissing in his car, parked right in front of my house. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 days ago, while I was working late. "Mrs. Hadley, you're amazing." "I'm nosy," she corrected, "but sometimes nosy is useful." "What are you planning to do about this situation?" "I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who they really are." She smiled, and for a moment I could see the young woman she'd been 50 years ago. "Good. I never liked that wife of yours anyway. Too fancy for this neighborhood, always acting like she was better than the rest of us. Would you be willing to share these photos if needed?" "Nicholas, dear, I've already emailed them to half the neighborhood." Adam's day started going wrong at 7:30 the next morning when he discovered his car wouldn't start. By 8:15, when the smell hit him, he was calling every auto shop in town. By 9 o'clock, when he finally got the car towed to a garage, the entire office building's parking garage smelled like low tide in August. I know this because Marty was parked across the street, watching the whole thing unfold. "You should have seen his face," Marty told me over lunch. "Looked like he was about to throw up." Which, considering the smell, he probably was. "That's just the opening act," I said. "Tonight's the real show." That evening, I drove to the End Zone, the dive bar where half the town went to drink away their problems. It was the kind of place where the beer was cheap, the music was loud, and everyone knew everyone else's business. Perfect for what I had planned. Darla Martinez owned the End Zone, and she'd been serving drinks and collecting secrets for 15 years. She was tough as nails, with arms covered in tattoos and a mouth that could make a sailor blush, but she was also fiercely loyal to the people she cared about. I'd known her since high school, and she'd always had a soft spot for underdogs. "Nick Forrester," she said as I walked in. "Haven't seen you in here for months. Figured married life was keeping you busy." Something like that. I took a seat at the bar. "Beer and a favor if you're taking requests." "Depends on the favor." She pulled a Budweiser from the cooler and popped it open. "What's going on?" I told her everything. The affair, the evidence, the plans I'd been making. Darla listened without interruption, her expression growing darker with each detail. "Your own brother," she said when I finished. "That's low, even for this town." "It gets better. Turns out he's got another girlfriend too." "Son of a bitch." She leaned across the bar. "What do you need from me?" "Information. Adam comes in here sometimes, usually with women who aren't my wife. I need to know what he talks about, who he's with, what he says when he thinks nobody's listening." "Consider it done." She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts. "I've got something for you already, actually. Your boy was in here 2 nights ago with a redhead named Jessica. Real cozy, lots of whispering. But here's the interesting part. She was asking questions about you." "About me?" "Wanted to know what kind of guy you were, whether you had a temper, whether you might do something stupid if you found out about the affair. Almost like she was worried about you finding out. Or like she was planning to tell me herself." Darla grinned. "Now you're thinking." "This Jessica, she works at the law firm downtown. Brennan, Walsh, and Associates. Might be worth a conversation." I finished my beer and left $20 on the bar. "Thanks, Darla. I owe you one. Just promise me I get to watch when you bring those 2 down." "Front row seats," I promised. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove downtown to Brennan, Walsh, and Associates. It was one of those glass and steel buildings that screamed expensive lawyers, the kind of place where Adam would feel right at home. I waited in the lobby until I saw a redhead matching Darla's description come through the revolving door. "Excuse me," I said, intercepting her at the elevators. "Are you Jessica?" She turned, and I could see the recognition in her eyes immediately. I looked enough like Adam that she knew exactly who I was. "You're Nick," she said, "Adam's brother. And you're the woman he's been cheating on my wife with." Her face flushed red, but she didn't deny it. "We need to talk." "Yes, we do." We found a coffee shop around the corner, one of those trendy places with overpriced lattes and uncomfortable chairs. Jessica ordered something with too many syllables while I stuck with black coffee. "How long have you known?" she asked once we were seated. "About you and Adam?" "Just found out yesterday. About Adam and my wife? 3 months?" She stared into her latte like it held the answers to life's mysteries. "I didn't know he was married when we started seeing each other. He told me he was divorced." Classic Adam. What changed? "I saw him with another woman last month. Blonde, very put together. They were acting like a couple, so I followed them." She looked up at me with tired eyes. "Imagine my surprise when they went to a house with your last name on the mailbox." "So, you know about Lila." "I know he's been playing both of us. And probably others too." She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. "I've been documenting everything. Photos, receipts, hotel records. I was going to confront him this weekend." "Don't." "Why not?" I smiled, and she actually leaned back in her chair. "Because I've got a better idea." "How would you like to help me destroy him completely?" Jessica stared at me for a long moment, then smiled back. It wasn't a nice smile. "I'm listening." We spent 2 hours planning. Jessica, it turned out, was a paralegal with access to all sorts of useful information. She'd been investigating Adam for weeks, building a case against him for her own purposes. Combined with my evidence, we had enough material to ruin him professionally, personally, and financially. "There's something else," she said as we prepared to leave. "Adam's been embezzling from his company. Small amounts, but consistent. I have copies of the altered invoices. How did you get those? He brought work home sometimes. Left his laptop open while he showered." She shrugged. "I got curious. Jessica, you're magnificent. I'm pissed off. There's a difference." That afternoon, I met Marty at his garage to plan the next phase. Adam's car was still in the shop, but that was the least of his problems. Jessica had agreed to help us coordinate a simultaneous attack on multiple fronts. "So let me get this straight," Marty said, looking over the timeline we'd created. "Tomorrow night during the town's Halloween festival, we're going to expose him to his girlfriend, his work, and the entire town all at once. That's the plan. And the wife? Lila gets her own special surprise. I've been saving the best for last." Marty grinned and cracked his knuckles. "This is going to be fun." The annual Halloween festival was the social event of the year in our town. Main Street was closed to traffic. Vendors set up booths selling everything from caramel apples to handmade crafts, and half the population turned out in costume to celebrate. It was also the perfect place for a very public reckoning. I arrived early before the crowds and found Jessica waiting by the fountain in the center of town square. She was dressed as a witch, which seemed appropriate given what we were about to do. "Everything ready?" I asked. "Adam thinks we're meeting for a romantic evening. I told him to meet me by the bandstand at 8 o'clock. She held up her phone. "I've got everyone on speed dial." "And Lila?" "Your neighbor lady is handling that part. She called Lila this morning and told her she had something important to show her, something about her husband's suspicious behavior. I had to admire Mrs. Hadley's sense of drama. She'd convinced Lila to meet her at the festival at 7:30, ostensibly to discuss my alleged affair with a coworker. Lila, ever eager to play the victim, had jumped at the chance to gather evidence against me. She had no idea what was waiting for her. By 7 o'clock, the festival was in full swing. Families with children in costume wandered between the booths, teenagers clustered around the games, and adults sampled the various food offerings. I spotted several of my coworkers, some neighbors, and even my boss from the construction company. Perfect. At 7:25, I saw Lila arrive. She was dressed as a vampire, complete with fake fangs and a flowing black cape. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mrs. Hadley intercepted her near the apple-bobbing booth, playing her role perfectly. She was dressed as a fairy godmother, complete with a wand and a knowing smile. "Lila, dear," I heard her say as I moved closer. "Thank you for coming. I have something very important to show you." "What is it, Mrs. Hadley?" "You said it was about Nick?" "Oh, it is. But first, I want you to meet someone." Mrs. Hadley gestured toward the bandstand where Jessica was waiting. "That young lady over there has some very interesting things to tell you about your brother-in-law." Lila's face went pale beneath her vampire makeup. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't, dear. Just like you don't know about the BMW that's been parked on our street for months, or the hotel receipts, or the joint bank account." By now, people were starting to notice the conversation. Mrs. Hadley had a voice that carried, and she wasn't making any effort to keep things quiet. "Mrs. Hadley, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," Mrs. Hadley said, raising her voice even more, "is thinking that the rest of us are as stupid as your husband." That's when Adam arrived. He was dressed as a pirate, which seemed fitting for someone who'd been stealing another man's wife. He spotted Jessica first and started walking toward her with a confident smile. Then he saw Lila and Mrs. Hadley, and the smile faltered. "Jessica," he called out, trying to maintain his composure. "Sorry I'm late." "Adam," Jessica replied, her voice carrying across the square. "Perfect timing. I was just about to meet your sister-in-law." The crowd was definitely paying attention now. Conversations stopped, heads turned, and I could see people pulling out their phones to record whatever was about to happen. Adam looked around, finally realizing he was walking into a trap. His eyes found mine in the crowd, and I gave him a little wave. "What's going on here?" he demanded, but his voice cracked on the last word. "What's going on?" Jessica said, pulling out her manila envelope. "Is that your girlfriend and your sister-in-law are about to compare notes?" She handed the envelope to Lila, who opened it with shaking hands. I watched as she flipped through the photos, Adam and Jessica at restaurants, hotels, her own house. Her face went from pale to red to purple. "You son of a bitch," she whispered, then louder, "You son of a bitch." "Lila, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been cheating on me with her while I was cheating on my husband with you?" Her voice was getting higher and more hysterical. "Explain how you told her you were divorced when you were planning to leave your wife for me?" The crowd was definitely invested now. This was better than any reality TV show. "Actually," Mrs. Hadley interjected, "he told you he was going to leave his wife for you. But according to these bank records, he's been planning to leave town entirely. With neither of you." She produced another envelope, this one containing printouts that Jessica had provided. Bank statements showing Adam had been systematically draining accounts and preparing to disappear. "You were going to leave?" Lila shrieked. "With my money?" "It's not your money," Adam shot back, finally losing his temper. "It's Nick's money that you've been stealing to spend on our relationship." And there it was. In front of half the town, Adam had just admitted to the affair and implicated Lila in financial fraud. The crowd murmured appreciatively. This was definitely going on social media. "Oh, it gets better," I said, finally stepping forward. The crowd parted to let me through like I was the star of this particular show, which I suppose I was. "Nick," Lila started, "I can explain." "No need," I said, pulling out my own phone. "I've got recordings of you explaining everything already. Months of them. Would you like me to play them for everyone?" "You wouldn't dare." I hit play on the first recording. Lila's voice filled the square, crystal clear through the portable speaker I'd brought. "Nick's such an idiot. He has no idea what's going on right under his nose. Sometimes I think I could bring Adam home for dinner and he still wouldn't figure it out." The crowd gasped. Someone in the back started clapping. "That's from 3 weeks ago," I said. "Want to hear the one where you and Adam discussed draining our joint savings account?" "Stop," Adam said, stepping toward me. "That's enough. Actually, it's not nearly enough." I looked around at the crowd, making eye contact with my boss, my coworkers, and several of Adam's colleagues who'd come to the festival. "See, Adam here has been embezzling from his company to pay for hotels and gifts for not just my wife, but at least 2 other women. Jessica, would you like to share those documents?" Jessica smiled and pulled out another folder. Altered invoices, fake expense reports, and forged signatures. About $30,000 over the past year. Adam's boss, a thin man named Henderson, who I
You cheated on me! You betrayed me! You destroyed our family!
Yes, I cheated! And you're the one to blame! You were never there for me! We're divorcing!
You get nothing! The house is mine! The money is mine! You'll live on the street! What?
Want to know who I cheated with? Your boss! He's a real man!
You're finished! I'll make sure you get nothing! You hear me? Nothing!
I don't need your money. I'm leaving you for him. He's twice the man you are. And you know what else?
recognized from the country club, pushed through the crowd. "Adam? Is this true?" "Mr. Henderson, I can explain." "With what? More lies?" Henderson's face was red with anger. "You're fired, and we'll be pressing charges." That's when Adam snapped. He lunged at me, swinging wildly. I'd been expecting it. Construction work teaches you to read people's body language, and Adam had been coiling up like a spring for the past 10 minutes. I stepped aside and let his momentum carry him past me, then grabbed his arm and twisted it behind his back. The crowd cheered like we were at a wrestling match. "Let me go." "In a minute." I looked over at Lila, who was standing frozen in the middle of the square, still clutching Jessica's evidence. "Lila, sweetheart, there's one more thing." "What?" she whispered. "I filed for divorce this morning, and I've frozen all our joint accounts. The house is in my name, the cars are in my name, and as of today, your credit cards are canceled." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You can't do that." "Already did. Jessica helped me with the paperwork. Turns out having a paralegal on your side is very useful." I released Adam, who stumbled forward and nearly fell. He caught himself and spun around to face me. "This isn't over," he snarled. "Yes, it is." I looked around at the crowd, at the phones recording everything, at the faces of people who would be talking about this night for years. "It's very much over." Adam and Lila looked at each other, then at the crowd, then at the evidence scattered around their feet. Without another word, they turned and ran, pushing through the crowd and disappearing into the night. The square erupted in applause. "Well," Mrs. Hadley said, adjusting her fairy godmother costume, "that was more entertaining than the puppet show. The aftermath of the Halloween festival was everything I'd hoped for, and more." By the next morning, videos of the confrontation had been shared hundreds of times on social media. The local newspaper ran a front-page story with the headline, "Festival Fireworks, Local Man Exposes Cheating Wife and Brother." Even the radio station was talking about it during their morning show. I woke up in my empty house feeling lighter than I had in months. No more pretending, no more wondering where Lila was or what she was doing. No more family dinners with Adam where I had to smile and make conversation while he stole my life. My phone had been ringing constantly since the night before. Reporters, friends, co-workers, even a few people I hadn't talked to in years. Everyone wanted to know the details, to hear the story firsthand. The most interesting call came from Adam's girlfriend, his other girlfriend, apparently. "Is this Nick Forrester?" The voice was young, nervous. Speaking. "My name is Tracy Walsh. I think I've been dating your brother." I sat up straighter. "For how long?" 6 months, but after seeing the news this morning, I'm wondering if anything he told me was true." "Probably not. Want to meet for coffee?" "I think we have a lot to talk about." Tracy turned out to be a sweet kid, maybe 25, who worked as a dental hygienist across town. Adam had told her he was single, successful, and looking for something serious. He'd been taking her to nice restaurants, buying her gifts, and talking about their future together. "He said he was saving up to buy a house," she said, stirring her latte with shaking hands. "He showed me pictures of this beautiful place on Riverside Drive. That's the same house he was looking at with my wife. Oh, God." She buried her face in her hands. "How many of us were there?" "So far I count 3, but the day is young." She laughed, despite herself. "What happens now?" Now Adam faces the consequences of his choices. His company fired him yesterday, and they're pressing charges for embezzlement. His reputation in this town is finished, and based on what I'm hearing, he's got some very angry women looking for him. "Good," she said fiercely. "He deserves everything he gets." That afternoon I got a call from Marty. "You need to get down here," he said. "Now." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. Just get down here." I drove to Marty's garage, where I found him standing next to Adam's BMW with a huge grin on his face. "Look what came back," he said, patting the hood. I thought that was still in the shop. It was. Until this morning, when Adam's check bounced. Apparently, when you freeze someone's accounts, it affects their ability to pay for car repairs. The car looked worse than when we'd sabotaged it. The interior had been torn apart in an attempt to find the source of the fish smell. The engine was in pieces, and there were stains on the upholstery that would never come out. Shop owner called me to tow it away, Marty continued. Said Adam owes them $3,000 in parts and labor. And I may have mentioned that Adam was no longer employed and had skipped town, so they signed the car over to me as payment for the tow. I stared at the ruined BMW. What are you going to do with it? I was thinking we could donate it to the high school auto shop class. Let them use it for parts. He paused. Or we could have some more fun with it first. What kind of fun? Marty's grin got even wider. The kind that involves a very public auction and all the proceeds going to charity. The auction was Marty's masterstroke. He organized it for the following weekend, advertising it as a community fundraiser with all proceeds going to the local women's shelter. The irony was perfect, Adam's car being sold to benefit women who'd been betrayed and abandoned. Half the town showed up. People who'd been at the festival, people who'd only heard about it secondhand, and people who just wanted to be part of the story. The bidding was spirited, with several people clearly more interested in being associated with the legend than in actually owning a ruined BMW. Mrs. Hadley won with a bid of $500. What are you going to do with it? I asked her as she signed the paperwork. Drive it to church every Sunday, she said with a wicked smile. I want everyone to remember what happens to men who betray their families. The week after the auction, I finally heard from Lila. She called from her sister's house in Connecticut, where she'd apparently fled after the festival. Her voice was small, defeated, nothing like the confident woman who'd been texting her lover while sitting next to her husband. Nick, we need to talk. No, we don't. Talk to my lawyer. Please. I know I messed up, but we can work through this. 12 years of marriage has to count for something. It did count for something. It counted for you having 12 years to figure out how to be a decent person. You failed. It was a mistake. It was a choice. A series of choices made over 8 months while you looked me in the eye and lied every single day. She was crying now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no desire to comfort her. The woman I'd married was gone, if she'd ever existed at all. What about our daughters? Our daughters will be fine. They'll spend weekends with me and they'll learn that actions have consequences. Maybe they'll make better choices than their mother. I have nothing, Nick. No job, no money, no place to live. You have exactly what you chose. You chose Adam over me, lies over truth, betrayal over loyalty. Now you get to live with those choices. I hung up and blocked her number. 2 weeks later, I got the call I'd been waiting for. Mr. Forrester? This is Detective Morrison with the state police. We've arrested Adam Forrester on charges of embezzlement and fraud. We wanted to let you know that we may need you to testify. Happy to help. There's something else. We found evidence that he'd been planning to leave the state with approximately $200,000 in stolen funds. If your wife hadn't been exposed at the festival, she might have been an accessory to his escape. I thought about that for a moment. In trying to destroy me, Lila had actually saved herself from federal charges. Detective, that's the first time my wife's betrayal has worked out in anyone's favor. He laughed. Justice has a sense of humor sometimes. 6 months later, I was a different man living a different life. The divorce was finalized in March, with Lila getting exactly what she'd contributed to our marriage. Nothing. The house, the savings, the retirement accounts, everything stayed with me. The judge had been particularly unsympathetic to her claims, especially after reviewing the evidence of her affair and financial impropriety. Adam was sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered to pay restitution to his former company. He'd tried to plea bargain by claiming Lila had been the mastermind behind the embezzlement scheme, but the evidence didn't support his story. He'd acted alone, driven by greed and arrogance. I sold the house on Maple Street. Too many bad memories, and I wanted a fresh start. I bought a smaller place across town with a bigger garage and a workshop where I could build furniture in my spare time. It was peaceful, quiet, and entirely mine. My daughters, Emma and Sophie, adjusted better than I'd expected. They were old enough to understand that their mother had made serious mistakes, and they seemed to appreciate the stability of our new routine. Every other weekend, we'd work on projects together, go to movies, or just hang out and talk. Without the tension of a failing marriage hanging over everything, I was a better father. The construction business was booming. Word had gotten around about how I'd handled the situation with Lila and Adam, and apparently that kind of strategic thinking was valued in my line of work. I'd been promoted to senior foreman and was considering starting my own company. Jessica and I had become friends, bonded by our shared experience of being betrayed by Adam. She'd started dating someone new, a teacher from the elementary school who seemed genuinely kind and honest. We'd have coffee occasionally and laugh about how we'd brought down the great Adam Forrester. "Any regrets?" she asked me one afternoon in April. "About what?" "The whole thing. The public humiliation, the festival, all of it. Some people are saying you went too far." I thought about it for a moment. Adam and Lila spent 8 months systematically destroying my marriage, stealing my money, and lying to my face. They humiliated me in private every single day. I just returned the favor in public for one night. "Fair enough. Besides," I added, "it worked. They're both gone, I'm free, and everyone in town knows exactly what kind of people they really are. That's not revenge, that's justice." The biggest surprise came in May, when Mrs. Hadley knocked on my door with a casserole and some interesting news. "I thought you should know," she said, settling into my kitchen chair like she owned the place. "Lila's been calling around the neighborhood." "Calling about what?" "Trying to find people who'll say nice things about her for some kind of custody. Hearing. Apparently, she wants to get the girls back full-time." I felt a familiar anger start to build in my chest, but I pushed it down. "What did people tell her?" "Well, the Johnsons hung up on her. The Petersons told her they didn't want to get involved, and I may have mentioned that anyone who helped her would have to answer to me." "Mrs. Hadley, you're a treasure. I'm a woman who believes in justice, and justice means those girls stay with the parent who didn't abandon them to run off with their uncle." The custody hearing never materialized. Lila's lawyer apparently explained that her chances of success were essentially zero, given the circumstances of our divorce and the evidence of her behavior. She settled for supervised visitation twice a month, which was more than I thought she deserved, but probably best for the girls. Summer brought the town's annual festival again, and I found myself back in the same square where everything had changed the year before. This time, I was there with Emma and Sophie, watching them play games and eat cotton candy. "Dad," Emma said as we walked past the bandstand, "is this where you caught Mom cheating?" "This is where the truth came out," I said carefully. "Sometimes that's painful, but it's always better than living with lies." "Good," Sophie said fiercely. She was only 10, but she had strong opinions about right and wrong. "I'm glad you showed everyone what she really was." "I'm glad too, sweetheart." As we walked home that evening, I reflected on the year that had passed. I'd lost a wife and a brother, but I'd gained something more valuable, self-respect. I'd refused to be a victim, refused to let them get away with their betrayal, and refused to pretend that their actions didn't have consequences. Some people in town still thought I'd gone too far, that I should have handled things privately. But those people had never been betrayed by the two people they trusted most in the world. They'd never had to smile and make conversation while their life was being stolen from them piece by piece. I'd played by the rules for 12 years of marriage, and the rules had failed me. So I'd made new rules, and I'd won. That night, after the girls were asleep, I sat in my workshop and started planning my next project, a treehouse for the backyard. Emma and Sophie had been asking for one, and I thought it was time to build something positive, something that would last. As I sketched out the design, My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over," it said. I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it. Adam was in prison, Lila was in Connecticut, and I was exactly where I wanted to be. Whatever games they thought they were still playing, I was done participating. I turned off my phone and went back to my sketches. I had a treehouse to build, daughters to raise, and a life to live. The past was finished, and the future was entirely mine. But as I worked late into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching the house. Twice, I thought I saw a figure standing under the streetlight at the end of my driveway. Both times, when I looked directly, there was nothing there. Old habits, I told myself. After months of surveillance and planning, I was probably just paranoid. Still, I made a mental note to call Marty in the morning. It never hurt to be careful. The next morning brought clarity and an end to all remaining mysteries. I woke up to find my front door standing wide open and muddy footprints leading through my house. Nothing was missing, nothing was broken, but someone had definitely been inside. They'd gone through my workshop, my bedroom, even the girls' rooms. I called the police, then Marty, then Jessica. Within an hour, my house was full of people trying to figure out who had violated my sanctuary. "Any idea who might want to intimidate you?" Detective Morrison asked, as he dusted for fingerprints. "I have some theories." The answer came sooner than expected. At noon, Mrs. Hadley called with news that made everything clear. "Nicholas, dear, you need to know something. That woman, your ex-wife, she's been staying at the motel on Route 9 for the past week." "Lila's in town? She's been watching your house. I've seen her car parked at different spots around the neighborhood, always where she can see your driveway." "Why didn't you tell me? I thought she was just being pathetic. I didn't think she'd actually do anything stupid, but she had done something stupid, and now I knew who'd been in my house." I drove to the Route 9 motel, a rundown place that rented rooms by the week to people who'd run out of better options. Lila's car was parked outside room 12, and through the thin curtains, I could see her moving around inside. I knocked on the door. "Lila, it's Nick. We need to talk." The door opened, and I barely recognized the woman standing there. Lila had lost weight, her hair was unwashed, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. This wasn't the polished, confident woman who'd walked out of my life 8 months ago. "You came," she said, stepping aside to let me in. The motel room was a disaster. Fast food containers, empty wine bottles, and papers scattered everywhere. On the small table by the window, I could see printed photos of my house, my car, even pictures of me and the girls at the festival. "You've been stalking me. I've been trying to understand how everything went so wrong so fast." She sat on the bed and looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. One day we were married, and the next day my whole life was destroyed. "Your life was destroyed the day you decided to sleep with my brother. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Adam said he had a plan, that we'd be together, that everything would work out. And you believed him?" "I loved him." The words came out as a scream, and I could see the madness that had been building in her for months. "I loved him, and he left me with nothing. He left you with exactly what you deserved." She stood up suddenly, and I saw the kitchen knife in her hand. "Don't move," she said, pointing it at me. "We're going to sit here and talk about how to fix this. Lila, put the knife down." "No." "You destroyed everything. My job, my reputation, my relationship with the girls. You turned the whole town against me." I told the truth. That's all I did. "The truth?" She laughed, but it was the sound of breaking glass. "The truth is that you were a boring, predictable husband who took me for granted. The truth is that Adam made me feel alive again. The truth is that you're a vindictive bastard who couldn't stand the thought of me being happy. The truth," I said calmly, "is that you're holding a knife on your ex-husband in a motel room because you can't accept responsibility for your choices." That's when she lunged at me. I'd been expecting it. Months of watching people, reading their body language, predicting their moves had taught me to see violence coming. I stepped aside, grabbed her wrist, and twisted until she dropped the knife. She collapsed on the bed, sobbing. "It's over, Lila." "I know," she whispered. "I know it's over. But I don't know how to live with what I've done." I picked up the knife and set it on the dresser, out of her reach. Then I pulled out my phone and called Detective Morrison. "I need you to send a car to the Route 9 motel, room 12, I said. "I've got someone here who needs help." While we waited for the police, Lila told me everything. How she'd been living in her car for the past month because her sister had kicked her out. How she'd been fired from 2 different jobs when her new employers found out about the scandal. How she'd been planning to break into my house and steal enough money to leave town permanently. "I wasn't going to hurt you," she said. "I just wanted to scare you into giving me what I needed to start over." With a knife? I wasn't thinking clearly. When Detective Morrison arrived, he took one look at the scene and shook his head. "Mrs. Forrester, you're under arrest for breaking and entering, stalking, and assault with a deadly weapon." As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. "I'm sorry, Nick. For all of it. I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix anything." That evening, I sat in my workshop with Marty and Jessica, trying to process what had happened. "She's going to prison," Jessica said. "Probably for a couple of years." "Good," Marty replied. "Maybe she'll get the help she needs." "What about the girls?" I asked. "How do I explain to them that their mother tried to attack me with a knife?" "You tell them the truth," Jessica said. "Age-appropriate truth, but the truth. They're smart kids. They can handle it. And if they can't, then you help them handle it. That's what good parents do." The next few weeks were difficult. Emma and Sophie were confused and angry about their mother's arrest. They wanted to know why she'd done such terrible things, why she couldn't just be normal, why their family had to be so complicated. I did my best to explain without demonizing Lila completely. She was sick, I told them. She'd made bad choices, and now she had to face the consequences. But that didn't mean she didn't love them. "Will she get better?" Sophie asked one night as I tucked her into bed. "I don't know, sweetheart. I hope so. Will we see her again?" "Someday, when she's ready and when it's safe." "Do you hate her?" I thought about that question for a long time. Did I hate Lila? For the betrayal, the lies, the months of humiliation? For breaking into my house and threatening me with a knife? "No," I said finally. "I don't hate her. I feel sorry for her. She threw away everything good in her life for something that was never real." "I feel sorry for her too," Sophie said. "But I'm glad she can't hurt us anymore." "She can't hurt us anymore," I agreed. "We're safe now." And we were safe. For the first time in over a year, I felt completely secure in my own life. No more looking over my shoulder, no more wondering what new betrayal was coming, no more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Adam was in prison. Lila was in prison. The truth was out, justice had been served, and I was free to build whatever life I wanted. 3 months later, I got a letter from Lila. She was in a minimum security facility, getting counseling, and apparently making progress. She wanted me to know that she understood what she'd done wrong, and that she didn't expect forgiveness. "I destroyed our marriage," she wrote. "I destroyed our family. I destroyed myself. I know you'll never trust me again, and I don't blame you. But I want you to know that I'm trying to become the person I should have been all along. Maybe someday I can be a mother our daughters can be proud of." I read the letter twice, then filed it away. Maybe she was sincere. Maybe she really was getting better. But that was her journey now, not mine. My journey led in a different direction entirely. That spring, I started my own construction company. Forrester Construction specialized in custom homes and renovations, and we were booked solid within 6 months. Apparently, there was a market for builders who kept their word and delivered what they promised. I hired Marty as my business partner, and we brought on a crew of guys we'd worked with for years. Honest workers who took pride in their craft and treated customers with respect. The business grew faster than I'd expected. We were featured in the local newspaper, then in a regional magazine. People liked our story. The man who'd rebuilt his life after betrayal, who'd turned personal destruction into professional success. By the end of the year, we had 12 employees and a waiting list of clients. "You know what this means, don't you?" Marty said, as we reviewed the year-end financials. "What?" "You won. Completely. Adam's in prison, Lila's in prison, and you're more successful than you've ever been. You didn't just get revenge, you got the best possible life." He was right. I had won in every way that mattered. But the real victory wasn't the business success or the money, or even seeing my enemies face justice. The real victory was sitting around my dinner table every Sunday with Emma and Sophie, helping them with homework, teaching them to use tools in the workshop, watching them grow into strong, honest young women who understood the difference between right and wrong. The real victory was waking up every morning in a house that belonged entirely to me, with no lies, no pretense, no betrayal hiding in the shadows. The real victory was looking in the mirror and seeing a man who'd refused to be a victim, who'd fought back against injustice, and who'd built something better from the wreckage of his old life. On the second anniversary of the Halloween festival Confrontation, I drove past the town square where it had all happened. There was another festival going on, with the same booths and games and families enjoying the evening. I parked and walked through the crowd, remembering that night when I'd stood in this same spot and watched my carefully laid plans come to fruition. It felt like a lifetime ago. "Mr. Forrester?" I turned to see a young woman, maybe college age, approaching with a shy smile. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to say thank you." "Thank you for what?" "My mom was in an abusive relationship for years. She was too scared to leave, too afraid of what people would think. But after she saw what you did, how you stood up for yourself and didn't let anyone get away with treating you badly, she found the courage to leave too." She paused, tears in her eyes. "She said you showed her that sometimes you have to fight for your own dignity, that nobody else is going to do it for you." I felt a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with revenge or victory. This was something I'd never considered, that my actions might inspire others to stand up for themselves. "Is she okay now?" I asked. "She's great. She's got her own apartment, a new job, and she's happier than I've seen her in years. She says she finally remembers who she used to be before someone convinced her she wasn't worth fighting for. Tell her I'm proud of her. It takes courage to start over. I will. And Mr. Forrester, I hope someday I'm as brave as both of you." As I walked back to my car, I thought about courage and justice and the ripple effects of standing up for yourself. I'd thought my story was about revenge, but maybe it was really about something bigger. Maybe it was about refusing to accept unacceptable behavior. Maybe it was about demanding that people face the consequences of their choices. Maybe it was about showing the world that good people don't have to be victims. I drove home to my daughters, my business, my life that I'd built from the ashes of betrayal. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to prove that integrity and determination could overcome any obstacle. But tonight, I was simply a man who'd fought for his dignity and won.